Hi guys. I look tired because I am tired. It's 11 o'clock, but the Lord has been laying on my heart to share my testimony, and this is the best time to do it when the kids are asleep, so hopefully they'll stay asleep so I can share. I have a lot to share, and I'll probably be all over the place. I did write some notes of what I wanted to share, so I'll probably be looking at my notebook a lot. I want to start off by sharing some verses, and Psalm 71:15 says, "My mouth will tell of your righteous deeds, of your saving acts all day long, though I know not how to relate them all." And then 71:16, "I will come and proclaim your mighty acts, sovereign Lord. I will proclaim your righteous deeds, yours alone." And then verse 23 says, "My lips will shout for joy when I sing praise to you, I whom you have delivered." And in Psalm 66:16, "Come and hear, all you who fear God. Let me tell you what he has done for me." So this is my testimony of since I was a child. And there are a lot of moments that are hard to talk about. So I'm opening up and just being vulnerable. And you guys know that this is not something that I do. But I know if I share, if it even helps one person, then it's worth it. So from the time I was a child, I have suffered with anxiety, depression, and I was crippled with fear, and it was irrational fear, and I knew it was irrational. Things like I would be so nervous every day before school that I would get sick. I would throw up every day before school. And even at church, I would not want to get to church late, because if we went in late, then the children's pastor would call attention to us, not in a bad way. He would just say, "Hey, there's the Hyatt girls," and everybody would turn around and look at us. And I didn't want attention on myself. I didn't want people looking at me, so I would get upset and cry. And it got to the point where I would a lot of times just sit in the car in the parking lot because I didn't want people to look at us. Or sometimes if adults would try to talk to me, then I would just get upset and cry because I was nervous and anxious and panicked. And this kept on. I couldn't make eye contact with people. It got so bad at school that I ended up being homeschooled. And even through my adult years, I've struggled with anxiety, panic attacks. A lot of times I was misunderstood because people thought I was just stuck up or thought I was too good for people. But really, it was hard to even have a conversation with people. Like as soon as church was over or any kind of event or meeting, like I'm out of there. I didn't want small talk. I didn't want to have conversations with people. And like if there are ever, times at church or somewhere where they'll say, "Okay, everybody get in a small group," or "Turn to your neighbor and share this or that," or "Tell about yourself," like that's my cue to go to the bathroom. Like I'm not doing that. And I also struggle with low self-esteem and insecurities. Kids can be really cruel, and I had glasses, I was overweight, just silly things that don't seem like a big deal now, but when I was a kid, it was a big deal. Like PE, I always got picked last, so I always felt rejected. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I had a couple friends, but one friend, she wasn't my friend at school. It was only after, we got off the bus and she wanted to come over, but she was embarrassed to be my friend at school. So just little things like that I listened to the lies of the enemy. And, things like you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough. And then I had two beautiful sisters that were, skinny, and I never was. And I tried every kind of diet, pills, drops, low calorie, low fat, low carb, whatever, anything. And even when I did lose weight, even when one time I lost like over 50 pounds, I got below my goal weight and I still wasn't happy. I would constantly be trying to change my appearance, dyeing my hair, cutting my hair, just to change the way I felt about myself. But I never liked anything I saw in the mirror. I didn't look at other people and judge them or criticize them for what they looked like, but I did for myself. It was like I was looking at myself in the mirror with a different lens than I saw other people. I hated looking in the mirror. I was disgusted. I would come into agreement with the lies of the enemy. I would nitpick everything about my appearance. The gap in my teeth, my flabby arms, cellulite, my mom's stomach, my bags under my eyes, gray hair. Again, it wasn't like I looked at other people and saw these things, but when I looked at myself, then I was very judgmental. And I couldn't find anything I liked. And it spilled over into my parenting and being a wife. I always felt like I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough wife. And I would look at other people and think they had it all together, but I wasn't good enough. I felt like I was a failure. And I suffered with depression. And I knew I was so blessed. I had so much to be thankful for, but I couldn't help the way I felt. There were many times as a teenager, the enemy would fill my mind with suicidal thoughts. Just things like whenever we'd be going down the highway, I would just think, okay, just jump out of the car now. Just jump out of the car now. Or when I would be driving, I would just have thoughts of going off the road and just ending it. And even as an adult, he would fill my mind with thoughts that someone else would do a better job than me, be a better mom, be a better wife. And throughout the years, I tried different things for the depression and anxiety. I tried prescription drugs for a year. I read self-help books. I went to every altar call for anxiety or depression. And I just wondered why I always still felt that way, why it never went away. And I started to just believe that it was just the way God made me, that I would always suffer with these things. And I just kind of dealt with it for the past few years. There were ups and downs. Sometimes it was a little better, and then it would get worse, and it would just go up and down. And then 5 months ago, I received the worst phone call of my life. My sister Mindy called me in the middle of the night, and I knew immediately something was wrong. She was crying and said Mom called and Megan wasn't breathing, and just pray and that she would call back when she knew something. My sister Megan was 36 years old. She was in Florida on vacation with my parents and her 5-year-old twin boys. She passed away in her sleep, and I was devastated. My sisters are my best friends. We would know what each other was thinking without saying a word. We would say the same things sometimes. We would laugh till we cry. We would encourage each other, pray together, share our dreams with each other. I felt like part of me was gone. The Lord did amazing things in our family that week. We had so many people praying, so many friends and family praying for us, and people in Guam, our church where we used to go there, were interceding for us, and God did amazing things in that week leading up to the celebration of life. And if you haven't watched that, I encourage you to watch it. And my sister Mindy shares a lot of what God did in our family that week. The Lord gave us peace. There's a song that says, "I've got peace that makes no sense." And that was exactly what happened. And he gave us joy. And I knew that he is still good, and that he could use that situation and turn it around for good. And most importantly, he would be with me. In the 23rd Psalm, verse 4, it says, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." The Holy Spirit is our comforter. He has been with me every step of the way. A few days after her celebration, anxiety and depression set in again. I had so many unanswered questions. I didn't want to live without my sister. Of course, I love my husband and the kids, and I wanted to be there for them, but I just didn't know how I could go on without my sister. How could I go on when I felt like a part of me had died? I missed her. I would cry myself to sleep every night, and I would dread waking up in the morning. I would wake up and have to make myself get out of bed. I would have to give myself a pep talk. You can do this. I would try to encourage myself. I still had 6 kids, and I had daily tasks. I had 3 in diapers. I had to feed them. I had to do laundry and dishes and cleaning and homeschooling and all the things I had to do. And I would pray and ask Jesus, please come and take us, because I didn't want to keep going. I didn't know how I would make it. And during the next few months, the Lord began to do a work in me. He began to speak things and show me things. There were prophecies about God using me, and I would think, how are you ever going to use me? I can't even speak to a few people. I would stay home on days we had to speak in front of the class. When I was a kid, I would make sure I didn't go on those days. So how am I ever going to speak to anyone? How am I ever going to share anything? And during the next couple months, I went to a revival, and I went to a women's conference, and the Lord spoke some amazing things and did some things in my life, and I continued to draw closer to the Lord. Meanwhile, Brandon had started listening to some preachers on the topic of deliverance. They taught that Christians can have demons. I would be walking through and occasionally hear bits and pieces, but I wasn't sure what to think, because my whole life I was taught that Christians can't have demons. I thought Christians could be oppressed, like it was an outside thing, like they follow you around like a dark cloud. You know, I thought maybe that's like what the depression was. But during this time, 3 times since Megan passed away, I was choked in my bed. I physically felt pressure like on my chest, and I felt like choking, like around my neck. And I couldn't say anything. I was filled with fear, and I would be trying to say Jesus, and I couldn't get it out. And then when I would just keep struggling, and when I finally got it out and I said Jesus out loud, it went away, it released. And that happened 3 times. And I still, I knew it was a demon, but I didn't think they could be inside me. I just thought this is an outside thing. And then one day I was driving to meet Mindy and Jessica and Ange, my cousins, are more like sisters. I was driving to meet them, and there's a road that goes into town, and it's a curvy road. And I heard a voice say, just drive off the curve and it'll all be over with. So then I started thinking about it later, and I was so tired of having those thoughts. I still hadn't been watching the videos, but I remembered hearing in passing one of the guys talking about demons causing voices in your head. So then I began to wonder, what if Christians can have demons? What if this torment is demonic? What if I could feel differently? So I watched a couple of videos, and they explained there are many ways you can open doors to the enemy. That's one thing I had wondered. I mean, I have believed in the Lord. I accepted him as my Savior when I was 5 years old. I've been a Christian my whole life. So how could I have demons? But they explained unforgiveness, being offended, trauma, rejection, fear, sin, generational curses. Those are just a few of the things they named. And Ephesians 6:12 says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So they also explained how pain and sickness could be demonic. And Luke 13:10 says, on a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, woman, you are set free from your infirmity. Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. And the different translations say spirit of infirmity, disabling spirit, sickness caused by a spirit and crippled by a spirit. So, in verse 16 talks about Satan keeping this woman bound for 18 long years. And 7.5 years ago, after I had Emma, my first daughter, after she was born, the day after she was born, I started having horrible headaches and neck aches every day, every single day. And I went to the chiropractor. He gave me exercises to do. That didn't help. I went to the doctor. They couldn't find anything that was wrong. So I just dealt with it. I didn't want to take any medication. So I just had pain every day. And it went away when I was pregnant with Graham. And then after I had him, it came back. And for the last 7.5 years, it's just been off again, on again, more on. And then the last couple of months, November and December, was really bad again every day. And so I started realizing that there were many opportunities that demons could have entered. And if there was anything in me, then I wanted it out. I didn't know if there was, but I thought, what if? So I went in the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I looked into my eyes. And when I did, it didn't look like me. And it scared me because I knew there was something and I didn't want it. And I tried to cast it out myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I just didn't want it there. And I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt sick, but nothing happened. So I didn't know if it was gone, if it was there. And then a few days later, I saw that there was going to be a deliverance conference New Year's weekend. And I told Brandon, and he said, we have to go. I really wanted to go at first, but I thought there would be no way. We have 6 kids, and I didn't want to ask one of our moms to watch them because we'd have to be gone for 4 days. It would take a day to drive. It was in Tennessee, so it would be a day to drive down there. The conference was 2 days, and then it would be a day to drive back. So that's a long time to watch 6 kids. But the more I thought about it and prayed about it, the more I felt like we were supposed to go. And we decided we would go. And Brandon said, I know the enemy is going to try to get us not to go because we're supposed to be there. And that's exactly what happened. There were attacks on his business, on our finances, our van. One of our vans stopped working. Then the kids got sick a few days before we left. And I told Brandon, we were leaving Friday. And so Thursday, I said, if any of them get sick tonight, if they throw up tonight, I'm not going because I'm not going to leave a bunch of sick kids. It's hard enough to take care of them, but I don't want them, sick. And so they were fine that night. None of them threw up. And so we left the next day. And then about 3 hours down the road, my mom called and said they were sick again. But I know the Lord didn't let them be sick that night because I wouldn't have gone. And we made it down there to Tennessee late that night. And the next day was New Year's Eve. And the service started at 5, but we got there at 11 because we knew there were going to be tons of people there. And but when we left the hotel, the rental car wouldn't start. So I knew we were supposed to be there because there were so many things that just kept happening that the enemy was trying to attack. And we finally made it to the service, and it was amazing, but nothing happened for me as far as deliverance. It was an awesome way to end the year and to go into the next year, which is a powerful word and powerful worship. Like it was awesome, but I didn't get set free. And so we went back to the hotel. We didn't get back till about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had the headache and neck pain. I couldn't sleep all night. I was about to cry all night because it hurt so bad. And I woke up and I was almost in tears and I started throwing up and I couldn't even eat. And I just was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't go. But then I knew it was the enemy. So we went. And again, it was another awesome service, but I didn't get delivered. And then we got out of church about 2 o'clock and we went and ate lunch. And then I wanted to go back to the hotel and sleep because we were so tired, but we didn't have time before we would have to go back for the night service. That was the last service, and it was a mass deliverance service. And so we went to a parking lot and we napped. We set our alarms for like 30 minutes. And when we woke up, we were both so tired. And it was like, the only thing I can compare it to is like right after you have a baby and the baby's waking up all night and you're so exhausted. And I almost was like, well, let's just not go. But I knew that was the enemy. And so I kind of had this like righteous anger, like, no, I came this far. Like, we went through all this, all these attacks. Like, this is my last chance. And if there's something in me, I'm not taking it home. Like, I'm not going home the same way I came. So we went back to the service. And as soon as I went in, I was like, okay, like, I'm leaving my dignity. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't care what happens. I'm getting free tonight. And we went in, and when the pastor went up there, he said the same thing I had just been thinking, like, you're going to have to leave your dignity at the door. Don't worry about what people think. And so he led us in some renouncing things that we may not have known about, things we did know about, repentance, unforgiveness. When he gets to unforgiveness, which leading up to this point, I had already known that could be an open door. So I'd been praying the last month about, the Lord bring to my remembrance people that maybe have offended me and that I hadn't forgiven. So I had already done a lot of that. But then, so he's up there talking about unforgiveness. And then he says, maybe your 5th grade teacher embarrassed you in front of the class. And when I was in 5th grade, my teacher asked a question, and I knew the answer. I didn't raise my hand. And so she's walking around the class, getting really mad. And she says, somebody knows the answer to the question, and she's not raising her hand. She's wasting our time. And then she comes over to my desk, and she has a big yardstick, and she slams it on my desk. And she's like, when I ask a question and you know the answer, you raise your hand. Do you understand me? And it might not sound like a big deal, but to me as a kid, it was a big deal, and it was embarrassing. And then he goes on to say, the pastor, or maybe your gym teacher embarrassed you. And when I was in PE, we did jump rope for heart, and everybody was like, oh, I feel sick. And so they were trying to get drinks of water, and I went up to the teacher and said, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Can I go to the bathroom? And he got mad and said, no, everybody feels like that. Go wait in line with everybody else. So I went over there, and as I was going, I got sick and started throwing up on the floor. And then he got really mad and came over, and he said, you could at least throw up in the trash can. And so that was embarrassing, but I had forgotten about these things. And there were thousands of people in this service, and he said those things, and it might have been for some other people too, but I knew the Lord was speaking to my heart, and that I needed to forgive those people that I had forgotten about. And so then I knew that this was my night, and that the Lord saw me, and that I was supposed to be there. So he started going on with other things and naming things that you may have struggled with, and said, if this is you, stand up. And so he said some things, then he got to fear, and I stood up, and I felt a release, and I cried, and I sat down, and I felt, lighter, like, wow, like I think something left. And I do think something left at that point, but then he mentioned a few other things and didn't apply to me. And then he said, if you've struggled with depression and anxiety, stand up. So I stood up, and as soon as I stood up, he began confronting the demons, and I can't explain it, but I could barely stand, and I just kind of bent over, and I wasn't trying to do it, but I heard a wailing coming out of me. And then at that time, one of their prayer people came over and laid a hand on me, and he said, the spirit of loss, spirit of grief. And when he said that, I fell to the ground. I couldn't stand up anymore, and I heard screaming and coming out of me. And then the pastor from up on stage says, spirit of grief. And I heard more screaming coming out of me, and I felt it come out of me. And I know it sounds crazy. It's hard to explain, but that's what happened. I know it happened. I heard it. I felt it. And the only way I can explain it is almost like an out-of-body experience. I know it sounds really weird. Like it was me, but it wasn't me doing it, but I could hear what was going on. And so I was laying there. After the screaming stopped, I felt this huge release, this huge weight lifted off. And the guy came and prayed for me, and I just felt the Lord's presence, and it felt like a warm blanket just come over me. And I think I laid there for a few minutes. I don't know how long it was. But when I stood up, I felt like a different person. I felt free. I felt happy. I never felt like this before. And my headache and neck pain was gone. And that was a month ago, and it has never come back. And as we were worshiping, I mean, I've always, really meant it when I was worshiping, but the lyrics just meant so much more. Like they had a whole new meaning about deliverance and setting the captives free. And I was just so excited. When we got out to the car, I called my parents and called my sister, and I know they were like, what? Because, we've always thought Christians couldn't have demons, but they were like, you look different. And the pastor had said before we left, some of you will sleep better tonight than you've ever slept before. And that was so true, because usually I have a hard time sleeping. I toss and turn and can't sleep. I just keep waking up. And that night, I slept so well. I woke up in the morning and I'm like, surely it's time to wake up. And then it wasn't. And so I'd fall back asleep and be like, oh, hey, is it time yet? Eventually I just got up before my alarm clock even went off. And I never do that. And I got in the shower and I was just so full of joy. And I was singing, which I don't do. And I got out and I was just having a little praise party in the hotel. And I mean, I seriously felt like a new person. I've never felt like that before. And I still feel like that. And it's an awesome feeling that it was a new year, a new me. And on the 19th, I turned 40. And what a better way to enter my 40s. And on the way home, I told Brandon that, of course, I'm ready for Jesus to come back. But now, instead of being like, come back, please, right now, I'm like, wait, because we have work to do. We need to tell more people about you. And I want to see others delivered. And now that I'm experiencing this newfound freedom, I want to see others experience this freedom. I want people who are bound with anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts or addictions or whatever it may be, anger, rejection, generational curses. Nothing is impossible. Nothing, you are never too far gone. No matter what you're struggling with, no matter how deep of a pit you're in, that's not too hard for God. Jesus came to set the captives free. And when I got home, I went to a women's Bible study, which I've never done because I didn't want to be in a group setting. And I was excited to go. And on the way home, I know it sounds so cheesy, but it was like, when I was driving home, I was like, oh my goodness, the sky is so blue. And it really looked different to me. Everything is different to me. And I have a boldness that I've never had before. And it's just, I can't even explain. I can't put it into words. And I'm trying my best. But I really, he gave me a new life. He set me free. And he's just so amazing. I'm so thankful. And there's one little last part that has some verses I wanted to read before I end. Luke 8:38, the man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, return home and tell how much God has done for you. So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. And then verse 24, my tongue will tell of your righteous acts all day long, for those who wanted to harm me have been put to shame and confusion. And it just kind of makes me think about the confusion. There's a song and it's called Back to Life. So I encourage you to listen to that. But at the end, there's a part that says, the enemy thought he had me, but Jesus said, you are mine. And it's just so powerful, because that is the enemy's plan, is to kill, steal, and destroy. And he thought he had me. He did have me bound for almost 40 years. But Jesus said, you are mine. And he delivered me. And I pray that this helps someone. And if you want to be delivered, he is the deliverer. Jesus is the deliverer. So I'm sure this will cause some people to have questions. And I don't want to debate, but if you have questions, feel free to message me. I would love to share more of my experience if you want to hear. I would love to pray for you. And yeah, that's it. So I hope that this has helped someone. And I love you guys. And I'm so excited about what God is doing in my life and in the lives of others. And I can't wait to hear about what He does in your lives. So have a great night, guys.